If the trade war with China continues to escalate, it's not just headlines that will be affected, it's your household, your budget, your peace of mind. That's why now is the time to walk through your preparedness systems using a proven framework, the survival pyramid. This approach helps you think clearly and act practically so you don't overlook anything critical. And that's what we're going to do here by working our way up the survival pyramid from mindset and situational awareness to water, food, medical, and beyond, giving you a clear picture of how to protect what matters most. We'll also examine PACE with a sample PACE plan for you to build resilience into your food supply. Now, whether you're just getting started or working on shoring up your preps, this is the kind of checklist thinking that helps you adapt, stay ahead, and avoid unwanted struggle. First, let's start with number one, mindset, the foundation of your trade war readiness. Now, when it comes to preparedness, your mindset is your operating system that sets the foundation for everything that follows. Everything else in your preparedness builds on your mindset. And in the case of an easy to ignore trade war, because we have so much other upheaval and craziness going on, your biggest threat may be a false sense of security. In a time of such high, nonstop political emotion and 24-hour media sensationalism, it's easy for the downstream impacts on our daily life to get lost in the noise. So how do we avoid all that? Well, we avoid all that through our mindset and starting off with acknowledging that delays and high prices equal disruption. Now, normalcy bias spawned out of a lack of concern for the issue would have us believe that after decades of there never being a problem, having holes on grocery store shelves, waiting months for a car part to arrive, and bending under skyrocketing costs due to supply shortages isn't a big deal. And while I agree it might not be a calamitous deal, it is a big deal. That's because our supply chain system has been designed with efficiency in mind. Just ask any Lean Six Sigma or project management professional certified people, I'm one of them, what drives most businesses? Efficiency drives business because with efficiency comes increased profitability. Lean down the workforce, increase the work requirements, up the profits. Our system is designed to be as efficient and as profitable as possible. The problem with really efficient systems is, though, that they are so efficient that they have little to no slack built in to allow for flexibility to accommodate any hiccups that may occur. All it takes for the system to misfire and sputter is for unplanned problems like a trade war to overload the minimal slack in the system. That's why even if the trade war lasts for only a few weeks, the ripple effect can create months of supply chain shortages and backlogs. That lag in the supply chain is where fights for toilet paper and spam start. Next, when it comes to mindset, don't be complacent. And just because past disruptions have been more of an inconvenience than anything else doesn't mean this will be the same. The U.S.-China trade war could heat up to be more than a minor diplomatic scuffle. It stands to be a direct hit to the global supply chains we rely on every day. If you've already started taking action to prep for the effects of the trade war, that's awesome. Use this to make sure you have your bases covered in case I mentioned something maybe you haven't considered. If, however, you haven't started taking action, you should ask yourself some pretty pertinent questions. Number one, ask yourself if you are assuming it will resolve itself. In other words, don't worry about it right now. Everything's going to be fine. Also ask yourself, are you waiting to see how bad it gets before you act? If you are, well, that means it got bad before you acted, right? Complacency is the comfort zone where preparedness goes to die. When it comes to the trade war, at a minimum, everybody should recognize that there are major opposing economic forces at play, and as a result, nothing is certain. Fortunately, though, the antidote for uncertainty is preparedness, and that's why we're all here. Next, when it comes to your mindset, be flexible. Preparedness isn't about locking into one ride or die, this is the way it's going to happen scenario. It's about staying adaptable and looking for changes in your risk profile. That's especially true when we're in the slow boil of a weeks or months long developing trade war. With today's news cycle on warp drive, it's easy to become numb to the events that drag on more than a few days. Next for mindset is to think in terms of margin. And margin is the space between what you need and what you actually have. It's the difference between skating by and staying ahead. In a trade war, that can mean having an extra bottle of medicine, a backup tool, or an extra month's worth of food. When systems slow down or break, Margin is what buys you time for the system to get back up to pace. Margin not only buys you time, but it buys you options and peace of mind too. Without it, you're operating on hope, and hope is not a controllable factor of success. Lastly, when it comes to mindset, is don't panic buy. And yes, the supply chain may have issues. And yes, if it gets bad enough, we could all feel some pain. However, what is guaranteed to be painful is if you panic buy, run up credit card debt, then after this all settles down, find yourself paying 29% interest rate on a can of beans. All right, next, after mindset, moving up the survival pyramid is situational awareness. Now, the first key to overcoming difficult times is understanding what's going on so that we can make the best decisions possible. And that's precisely what you're doing by being here. Keep doing what you're doing, seeking out information and new perspectives. When you're out and about, gather as much personally observed and verified objective data as possible. See what's going on around you, see what's out there so you know firsthand. Don't bite too hard at what is said online and in mainstream media. There is so much fake stuff going around these days, it's wild. In today's increasingly AI-driven world, we must be critical of the information we use in our decision-making processes. So do your best to vet and verify everything that you use to make a decision, everything you use to form an opinion. Make sure that you vet and verify that information. Next up, tip number 3 has to do with safety and security. Up the next level of the survival pyramid, economic hardship often increases the likelihood of civil unrest, crime, and other less than desirable possibilities. So since your home is where you most likely have your most precious assets, you and your loved ones, and the resources and supplies you need to overcome a societal downturn, you must keep it safe and secure. So double check your home security. Does your home make less than appealing target? Do you have an ability to monitor your property, know if someone has entered it? Have you taken steps to reinforce your home's point of entry? What about physical barriers to slow someone's access to your home? And if those steps fail, do you have a plan to successfully defend your home, keeping you and your family as safe as possible? Have you considered building a budget-friendly safe room yet? If not, I have an article over on Mind4Survival.com that walks you through all of that. Just like you can't deal with a problem if you don't know it's there, a problem can't cause issues if it doesn't know you're there. So do your best to make yourself unnoticeable. Work at being low profile. Don't advertise your preparedness. To the general passerby, you want people to think that you're in the same boat as they are. To that end, the more you can stay home and avoid unnecessary contact with others, the better off you'll be until times get better. All one has to do to recall society's quick demonization of preparedness is look at the labels attached to preppers because we purchased hand sanitizer and toilet paper before the disaster happened, right? We were all called hoarders and worse. Next up, the survival pyramid, number 4, is life-saving medical. Do you or a loved one have any medical conditions that require ongoing prescription medication? If so, see what you can do about getting your prescriptions refilled now before the trade war really sets in. And if you can get ahead on those, get those refills in ASAP. Now, when it comes to medications, many people often don't know where to access resources they need to find things such as emergency medications, locally grown food, etc. You might not have a supportive doctor, for example, or know a local barter group, but that doesn't mean you're stuck. There are online medical services like Jace Medical, where you get the Jace case, or the wellness company that legally provide access to emergency antibiotic kits through licensed physicians. Now, they're not cheap usually. They're $100 to $300, but you can get all the antibiotics you really need to head into emergency from Jace Medical and the wellness company. Next up, moving up the survival pyramid, number 5 is shelter. Take a look at your home. Does a worsening financial situation risk your housing? If so, look now at backup options, right? Talk to family and friends, research tenant protection laws, and know local renting and housing aid options. Do your research now. Is there any maintenance needed, like weatherproofing your home now for seasonal extremes while supplies and materials are affordable? Do you recall how lumber prices jumped during COVID and other home goods and building supplies went up? If you have the time and resources, consider moving forward with any critical repairs if you have the ability now. Also, when it comes to shelter, sanitation, because remember, going back to COVID, don't get caught unprepared. Stock up on your toilet paper now, your paper towels, and other needed paper products. Look to see what comes from China. Get those things now. Don't get caught, in having to wait to go to the store when everything's being rationed. If you can get ahead of that, you probably are, because you're a prepper. Speaking of toilet paper shortages, have you considered a bidet? They reduce dependency on paper products and are amazingly hygienic. Dale Goodwin over at Survivalist Prepper just got one of those. Next, moving up the survival pyramid, step and tip number 6 is water. While municipal water should be fine, now is the time to stock up on any water treatment supplies if you use them. For example, do you have extra parts on hand if you use a home water filter? Do you have a home well? Do you have extra parts on that? Were you planning on doing something about that in the near future? They may be in short supply soon. When was the last time you double checked and rotated your water storage while we're talking water? Do you keep water in your vehicle? When was it last checked? Next up, the survival pyramid, number 7 is food. Focus on items impacted by global trade. Coffee, rice, veggies, fruits, proteins, and cooking oils. And yes, I did put coffee number 1 on my list. So I'd also double check your pantry to see what may expire soon and devise a plan to replace it before prices get too high. If you know something will expire in the next few months, picking it up now can get you ahead of paying a higher price later. And number 8, other consumables. Now I want to cover some of the other non-life sustaining but good to have on hand consumables such as electronics. Many electronics and their parts are made overseas. Stock up on cables, power adapters, extra mice and keyboards and chargers. Don't forget batteries. I love my rechargeables. Now, if you've been thinking that your old computer, phone, etc. needs to be updated, it might be the time to revisit that question. Do you have the generator? Right? Does your generator need to be PMCS? Do you need to put new parts on or anything like that? What do you got going on there? If you're set up with solar, check your system. Also double check that you have backup heat and cooking sources going on. Remember, President Trump put a lot of the tariffs on hold for 90 days, and there's background talks going on between China and other countries. So when we're looking at 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months out, the tariffs and the trade war, who knows how this all goes. Number 9 at the top of the pyramid, community. Work on expanding your local network so you have more opportunities to stave off high prices and struggling supply chains. Always keep an eye out for local opportunities and become familiar with what the locals have to offer, right? When you're familiar with that adds another layer to your long-term resilience. It helps you to both save time and money. If you haven't already done so, become neighborly and see what kind of deals are out in town in your local area and all that, in case the big box stores have trouble meeting demand down the road. Build those relationships now with vendors at farmers markets, local CSA shares and co-ops, independent butchers, dairies, and produce stands. There's the Buy Nothing groups online. There's Facebook Marketplace. Craigslist, I think, is still running. Thrift stores and such, right? And what does all that get you? That gets you to having stuff and trying to figure out what do you have for what goods you have. If the price of goods goes up, we may be in a spot that we start looking at bartering. As prices rise, the more and more people begin to look for side hustles and other ways to do more with less. One way is to establish good local relationships within your geographic area, right? We covered that. Are there farmers, ranchers, growers, tradesmen, artisans, and so on in your area who would be happy to work out something mutually beneficial? They have a good or service that you want, and you have a good or service they want. Just remember, if you're going to barter, wheel and deal and all that, do it safe, especially in times of need when people really need things, right? You don't want your trade to go sideways. As for barter and networking, how do you get started? Well, that's what we talked about just a minute ago, being neighborly, right? That starts with saying hello. Walk the locals farmers markets, walk around, get online, go join local groups, join the local Facebook group, go to different swap meet and see what's going on out there. That's all it takes to begin. And number 10 on this is PACE plan. When it comes to our preparedness, the best approach is through layers of preparedness, and an easy and effective way to manage our layers of readiness, as you all probably know, is the PACE plan. If you're new to preparedness, PACE planning originated in military communications, and outside of the military, in similar circles, it's not something many are taught today. PACE planning involves creating multiple options to satisfy your critical needs. These options are based on the layered acronym PACE, which stands for Primary, Alternate, Contingency, and Emergency. And for people new to it, the concept of PACE planning may seem over the top. However, it's an excellent and thorough way to cover your bases, especially for the essential things. And you only have to go as far down the PACE plan as you want when you're working on your supplies and your planning and all that. Here's the thing. Once you start looking at your needs through the PACE lens, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, it begins to become second nature. The more you do it and think about it, the more you'll be able to look at things like your food pantry, your fridge, and other options and better understand what goes into what part of your meal plan first, what part of your prepping happens, because you're looking in things as a layer through the PACE plan. Remember, 1 is none, 2 is 1. PACE plan takes it that much deeper, right? So when you're looking at your meal plan, you're deciding what you're going to eat first. What I do is I eat what will go bad first and work to preserve what will last the longest as a last resort. I do that because if I have a bunch of food that's going to go bad, I eat it first. And while I'm working my way through that food over a week or two, whatever that time frame is, and I happen to get some more food that has a limited shelf life, well, I get to keep putting it into the fridge or whatever that rotation is and extending my long-term food so I don't have to touch it. Eat what will go bad first and work to preserve what will last the longest as a last resort. To help illustrate how a food PACE plan works, I'll apply it to how I visualize my supply, my food supply. This is just one example of using the PACE plan to manage your long-term food needs. There's all kinds of other ways you can do this, whatever works best for you. This is just how I do it. So my primary food is in my fridge, is in the refrigerator. And if you're not already there and before prices increase, work to make sure you keep that stocked up right now. And as we move into this trade war, maybe some tariff wars and all kinds of, who knows what's getting ready to happen, right? Right? Keep the fridge stocked with the fresh perishables that you usually live on while prices are low. Like I don't eat lots of processed food, so I have lots of meat and vegetables and stuff like that in my fridge. Those are the freshest, best food that we have, and it's all typically the first to go bad. So it's the first line of food in your preparedness plan or in my preparedness plan. My next line, my alternate food, is the freezer. So next you want to make sure that your freezer is as full of food as possible before we go into this trade war. Try to get there in case prices go up. Don't break the bank. The food in your freezer will last longer than most in your fridge, especially if you keep the freezer door closed and stash some frozen water bottles up there to take up as much empty void as possible and keep it really cold. Therefore, your freezer is your fallback, your alternate plan for staying fed after eating what's in your fridge. Next is my contingency food supply, and that's my shelf-stable food. Because once I get done through my fridge and my freezer, then I stock up on shelf-stable foods that will last a while, which you can eat to supplement any shortfalls with the food from the fridge and the freezer being empty. Think of things like canned foods, pasta, rice, etc., food that doesn't need to be refrigerated. If kept out of the sun in dry, cool conditions, typically that has a shelf life from 1 to 3 years. Sometimes 1 to 2 items, you might get a 5-year shelf life. So that's my shelf-stable food. That's my contingency plan. When it comes to E under PACE, emergency plan, my emergency food, that's my long-term storage food. And lastly, that's your emergency food supply. Do you have freeze-dried food or other sources of nutrition that will last well beyond the typical shelf-stable food? These things go 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years, depending on what you have going on. Now, that's your emergency food supply. Sometimes when people get down to emergency, that's where they're saying they're hunting and fishing. Well, if you're hunting and fishing or growing your own food, and those are reliable options for you, those are also something that you can place on the list as a means of preserving your longer lasting food supply. So your hunting and fishing and growing, if that's working for you, might be your primary means. And when that fails, you have your alternate, your contingency, and your emergency backups, because times are getting lean on that. So there you have it, an example of a PACE plan to help you meet your food preparedness needs. Remember, though, that this is just one example of numerous ways to apply the PACE plan to your food supply. It's up to you to work with your food needs to decide on how your PACE plan is best configured for your situation. Then applying the PACE plan to areas such as your water procurement, your water gathering and filtration, all your other stuff. Applying it to all those needs are also up to you. You can apply the PACE plan to anything that has multiple layers. In addition to resources, plans can have various versions. Routes to and from places can have the PACE plan applied. The PACE plan gives you multiple options and answers and opportunities at success. Now, let me ask you, in your mind, what's an ideal PACE plan for food? I want to hear about it in the comments.